My friends, there's a voice deep within each of us that spoke clearly, once, long ago, perhaps when you were a child or a young adult, or even last night when the silence finally broke through the noise. That voice whispered, or maybe shouted, the kind of life you knew you were made for, not merely a life of comfort or survival, but one of meaning, mission, and transcendence. But here's the tragedy: most people forget that voice. They trade their promise for convenience, their passion for approval, their purpose for predictability, and so the light begins to dim. Don't forget the life you promised to yourself. That's not a cliche or motivational slogan. That's a summons. It's a call to spiritual integrity. You see, the promise you made wasn't rooted in ego or fantasy. It was a glimpse of your God-given potential, your vocation in the highest sense. You weren't born to drift. You weren't made to blend in. You were made to become something radiant, to carry a truth, to live a life that echoes into eternity. But be warned, the world will tempt you to forget. It will seduce you with pleasure, lull you with entertainment, distract you with fear. That's why you must keep that promise alive in prayer, discipline, and action. It's time to remember, not to daydream, but to decide. The life you promised to yourself is not behind you. It is waiting for you. Not someday, now, not when it's easy, especially when it's hard. So rise up, dust off the dream, return to the road. The path is narrow, but it leads to life. There was a time when you knew exactly what kind of life you wanted to live, not in vague terms or half-formed dreams, but with a deep inner clarity. Maybe it was when you were a child, lying under the stars, wondering about the vastness of the universe and what role you might play in it. Maybe it was during a quiet moment, walking alone, when your heart whispered a vision of who you were meant to become. You didn't need to explain it to anyone. It wasn't about success in the eyes of the world. It wasn't about money, titles, or applause. It was about meaning. It was about joy. It was about doing something that mattered. It was about being someone who stood for something true. That vision wasn't given to you by chance. It wasn't a fantasy. It was a glimpse of the life God called you to live, and for a while it burned brightly. You could see it when you closed your eyes. You could feel it pulling you forward. You knew that life would cost you something. It would ask for sacrifice, for discipline, for courage. But still, you were willing. You wanted to live boldly, speak truth, love deeply, and leave something behind that could not be erased. You wanted to become someone whose life meant more than comfort. But over time, something began to shift. The world started to speak louder than the whisper in your soul. Responsibilities piled up. Disappointments came. You got tired. You got distracted. You started to settle for what was safe. You started listening to the voices that told you to be realistic, to be practical, to lower your expectations. You convinced yourself that maybe the dream was too big. Maybe the life you imagined wasn't meant for someone like you. And slowly, you stopped remembering. But hear this clearly. The voice that once spoke to you is still speaking. The dream hasn't died. It's only been buried. And your soul remembers, even if your mind has tried to forget. You were made for something more than routine. You were made to burn, to shine, to matter. And the promise you made to yourself, the one born in that sacred moment of clarity, is still waiting to be honored. So pause, breathe, be still enough to hear again. What did you once know about yourself that the world made you forget? What fire once burned in your chest before fear cooled it down? Return to that place. Not to live in nostalgia, but to recover your direction, because you are not too far gone, you are not too late, you have not missed your moment. The life you promised to yourself is still within reach. But it starts with remembering, and remembering begins now. There is a quiet tragedy that unfolds in the lives of many people, a slow, subtle drifting away from the life they once longed for. It doesn't happen all at once. There is no dramatic collapse, no sudden surrender. It's more like a slow fading of light, a dimming of the fire that once burned within. They begin with hope, with conviction, with clarity. They dream of a life marked by depth, truth, and meaning. They carry within them a sacred promise, an inner commitment to become someone they themselves would admire. But as the years pass, something shifts. The demands of daily life begin to press in. The world whispers its values: comfort, approval, predictability. And people begin to trade their calling for what feels easier. They trade their boldness for safety, their authenticity for acceptance, their passion for a paycheck. They tell themselves it's just for a season, just until things settle down, just until the timing is better. But the years move quickly, and the dream waits silently, untouched, gathering dust in the corners of the soul. They learn to live on the surface, to smile when they're not joyful, to agree when they don't believe, to show up, go through the motions, and call it a life. And they are praised for it. They are called responsible, mature, sensible. The world rarely warns them that they are forgetting. It only congratulates them for fitting in. But something inside them knows. There is a quiet ache that never quite goes away, a restlessness they can't explain, a shadow that lingers even in moments of success, because they were never meant to live a life of quiet resignation. They were meant to burn with purpose, to risk being misunderstood in order to be true, to step into the unknown with faith, not shrink back with fear. But comfort is persuasive, approval is addictive, safety becomes a false savior, so they silence their longing. They distract themselves with entertainment, with busyness, with noise. They build lives that look full on the outside, but feel hollow on the inside. And when they are alone, truly alone, they hear the echo. They remember what they once wanted, and they wonder if it's too late. The tragedy is not that they aimed high and failed, it's that they settled. They forgot. They stopped fighting for the life that once called to them, and the world let them, because the world prefers comfort to courage. It rewards conformity, not conviction. It cheers for the safe path, not the sacred one. But deep down, the soul does not forget. It carries the memory. It waits for the day when they will wake up, when they will feel again, when they will choose to remember what they gave up. It is a tragedy, yes, but it is not the end of the story, not yet. There is a voice within you that speaks with quiet authority, not loud, not demanding, not dramatic, but unmistakably real. It is not the voice of your ego. It is not the voice of fear or insecurity. It is the voice that comes from a place deeper than your own thoughts. It is the voice of your truest self, the one that knows who you are meant to be. It speaks not in arguments, but in clarity, not in pressure, but in peace. And when it speaks, it calls you to remember something sacred. That voice is not just imagination or emotion. It is the echo of the Creator's call within you. It is the imprint of a divine intention stamped upon your soul. It is the reminder that you were made for more than survival. You were made to become. When you once stood in awe of your own potential, when you felt stirred by beauty, by truth, by the desire to live a meaningful life that wasn't just inspiration, that was a glimpse of vocation, and that inner voice, the one that reminded you of your promise, is sacred. It is not a voice to ignore, not a voice to dismiss, and certainly not a voice to silence. The promise you made to yourself, perhaps in a moment of clarity or suffering or awakening, wasn't simply a personal goal. It was a response to that voice. It was your soul saying yes to its own purpose. To forget that promise is to lose your way, but to honor it, to protect it, nurture it, and live by it is to walk in alignment with who you were created to be. This world makes light of such things. It treats the sacred as optional. It tells you to chase what's profitable, not what's purposeful. It urges you to be impressive, not honest, but the inner voice is not moved by applause. It calls you not to fame, but to faithfulness, and deep down, you know when you are betraying it. You feel the tension. You sense the disconnect. You know when you are drifting from your center, because that voice keeps speaking. Even if you've neglected it, even if you've buried it beneath layers of doubt or distraction, it does not shout, it waits, it reminds, it stays, and when you are quiet enough, when the noise finally breaks, and your heart becomes still, you will hear it again. It will not accuse you, it will not shame you, it will simply call you back, back to the life you promised, back to the person you long to be, back to the work that stirs your spirit, back to the path that brings light to others. And if you choose to listen, if you dare to take that voice seriously, you will find something sacred waiting there. Not ease, but purpose. Not comfort, but calling. Not applause, but peace. The voice is real. The promise was holy, and it still matters. You were not born to float through life like a leaf in the wind. You were not placed on this earth to merely pass the time, to check boxes, or to endure the days until they run out. There is more to your life than routine, more than obligation, more than just getting by. Life is not an accident, and your existence is not random. You are not a background character in someone else's story. You were created with intention, formed with care, sent here with purpose. That means your life is a mission, not a drift, not a reaction to whatever happens, not a constant adaptation to the expectations of others. You have a calling, a unique contribution to make, a truth to carry, a task that no one else can fulfill exactly as you can. That calling might not look loud or flashy. It might not be something the world would applaud. But it is yours, and it is sacred. When you drift, you surrender that mission. You let your days be shaped by convenience instead of conviction. You move, but without direction. You work, but without joy. You speak, but without voice. Drifting is easy. You don't have to choose. You don't have to risk. You just go with the flow, but nothing great is ever born from drifting. No legacy, no healing, no transformation. Because mission requires intention, it demands clarity, effort, and perseverance. And yet, when you begin to live from that place of purpose, everything changes. Your work takes on meaning. Your relationships deepen. Your soul begins to breathe again. You may still face hardship. You may still feel fear, but you know why you're here. You know what you're building. You know what you're standing for. Mission gives you direction when the world is noisy. It gives you strength when the path is steep. It gives you peace when others chase distractions. You don't need to have it all figured out today, but you do need to say yes, yes to meaning over comfort. Yes to calling over conformity. Yes to movement with purpose, not motion without aim. You were not meant to drift through a life that feels hollow. You were meant to build, to bless, to become. You were meant to rise with conviction, to live with integrity, to act with courage. There is a place only you can fill, there is a need only you can meet, there is a light only you can shine, and you don't need the whole map, you just need to start walking toward the pull in your spirit. Because life is short, but it is not small, and when you live as if your days matter, they do. When you live as if your choices matter, they shape everything. This isn't about being perfect, it's about being faithful. To the call, to the truth, to the mission that was planted in your soul before you were even born. You are not here to drift. You are here to do something with your life that echoes beyond it. The world is loud. It's busy. It's relentless. Every screen you look at, every headline you read, every voice in your ear, they all seem to pull you in different directions. And if you're not careful, you begin to forget who you are. You begin to forget what actually matters. You begin to live in reaction, not in reflection. Culture has mastered the art of distraction. It knows how to keep your attention, how to keep you scrolling, how to keep you moving so fast that you never stop long enough to think. To feel, to remember, we live in a world of constant noise, and noise keeps us numb. It keeps us from hearing the still, small voice that actually tells us the truth. The world does not want you to listen to that voice, because that voice will call you to something deeper, something holy, and the world wants you to stay shallow. It wants you to chase trends, not truth. It wants you to pursue validation, not vocation. It wants you to stay busy enough that you never ask why you're doing what you're doing. It tells you to look successful, to sound important, to stay relevant, but it never asks you to be real. It never asks you to be whole. And so we begin to drift slowly, subtly, not because we chose evil, but because we stopped choosing at all. We let the world decide what's worth our time. We let others define our worth. We let our calendars fill up with things that leave our souls empty. And before long, we wake up and realize we've forgotten the life we were made for, not because we didn't care, but because we got tired, because we got distracted, because we were trying to keep up with everyone else. But here's the truth. The world does not care if you forget who you are. In fact, it prefers it, because a distracted soul is a manageable soul. A dimmed heart is a predictable one. When you live distracted, you are easier to control, easier to sell to, easier to please, but you were not made to live easy. You were made to live awake, alive, aware. You were made to ask bigger questions. You were made to pursue something eternal, not just urgent. But the world won't encourage that. It will offer entertainment when you feel empty. It will offer applause when you feel insecure. It will offer convenience when the path of character feels hard, and it all feels good for a moment. But then the ache returns, the hollowness, the nagging sense that something important has been lost. That's not a flaw in you, that's a signal, a reminder that your soul was made for more, not more noise. Not more stuff, more truth, more depth, more meaning. To recover that, you have to fight. You have to get quiet in a loud world. You have to stop scrolling and start listening. You have to stop reacting and start remembering. Because the world will not help you remember who you are. It will only help you forget. But there is still a voice underneath the noise, still a light waiting to break through the fog, still a mission buried beneath the distractions. You have not lost it forever, but you will have to choose to return. To keep the life you promised to yourself, you must do more than just hope. You must live with intention, with strength, with spiritual integrity. That promise wasn't light. It wasn't casual. It came from the deepest part of you, and to honor it, you must become someone capable of carrying it, because promises are not kept by accident. They are kept by discipline. Discipline isn't about rigid rules or cold routines. It's about creating space for your soul to breathe. It's about showing up even when you don't feel like it. It's about doing what's right, not what's easy. There will be days when everything in you wants to quit, when fear speaks louder than faith, when doubt clouds your vision. On those days, discipline holds the line. It keeps your feet moving when your heart is unsure. It keeps your words true when the world tempts you to bend. It keeps your eyes lifted when you want to look away. But discipline alone is not enough. You also need prayer, not just words spoken into the air. Not just ritual or routine, but real communion, real surrender, real listening. Prayer aligns you with something greater than yourself. It reminds you that you are not alone in this, that your promise is not yours to carry in isolation. Through prayer, your courage is renewed. Through prayer, your motives are purified. Through prayer, your mission is kept clear. Because without prayer, you can become consumed by performance. You can mistake your calling for a competition. You can lose the sacred in the pursuit of success. But prayer grounds you. It softens your pride. It strengthens your resolve. And then, courage. Courage is what breathes life into discipline and prayer. It's what allows you to stand when it would be safer to shrink, to speak when silence would cost you nothing, to act when fear tells you to wait. Courage doesn't mean you feel no fear. It means you don't let fear decide. It means you show up when it's uncomfortable. It means you risk being misunderstood. It means you walk forward even when the path isn't fully clear. Keeping the promise requires all three: discipline to build your life around what matters, prayer to stay rooted in the truth, courage to live it out in a world that won't always understand. Without discipline, you drift. Without prayer, you grow hollow. Without courage, you stay silent. Spiritual integrity is when all three come together. It's when your private life matches your public words. It's when your actions reflect your convictions. It's when your heart stays soft, even while your will stays strong. This kind of life is rare. It's costly. But it is the only life worthy of the promise you once made, because you didn't promise yourself ease, you didn't vow to fit in, you said yes to a higher standard, to a truer path, to a deeper life, and keeping that promise will stretch you. It will humble you, it will ask more of you than you thought you could give, but it will also transform you, it will wake you up, it will fill your life with meaning, so stay steady, stay grounded, stay brave. Because the life you were meant to live will only be built by someone who has the integrity to stay faithful, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. It's not enough to have a dream. It's not enough to feel inspired, moved, awakened by a vision of what your life could be. The dream is sacred, yes, but the dream is not the goal. It's only the beginning. A dream that stays locked inside the heart never becomes a life. A dream that is only admired, only imagined, only spoken about with longing, will never shape the world. Too many people fall in love with the idea of the life they want to live, but they never take the steps to bring it into being. They romanticize the dream, they talk about it, they picture it, they wait for the perfect time. But they do not move, they do not act, they do not build, and so the dream becomes a source of pain rather than purpose. It becomes a reminder of what could have been. Dreams are meant to be pursued. They are meant to take up space in the real world, to be tested, shaped, stretched. Until they become something you can live, this requires risk. It requires work. It requires showing up when you're uncertain. Taking the first step when the whole path is still in shadow. You cannot wait until you feel ready. You cannot wait until you have all the answers. You cannot wait for perfect conditions, because they will never come. You must move while the dream is still fragile. You must act while the fear is still present. You must create even when you feel unsure, because the dream is not strengthened by waiting. It is strengthened by doing. And yes, it might look different than you imagined. It might take longer than you hoped. It might demand more of you than you thought you could give, but it will also give you more than you knew was possible. Clarity, joy, depth, growth, life. When you act on your dream, even in small ways, something inside you comes alive. You stop waiting for life to happen. You start becoming a participant instead of a spectator. You stop looking at the promise from a distance, and you begin to walk toward it, step by step, day by day. No one else can do this for you. No one else can make you start. No one else can live the life you were meant to live. The promise you made to yourself was not a wish. It was a vow, a sacred agreement between who you were and who you are called to become. And the only way to honor that promise is to begin, not perfectly, not fearlessly, but faithfully, faithfully show up, faithfully create, faithfully build something that didn't exist before, because your dream is not just about you. It's about what your life can offer to others. It's about what your courage will inspire in those around you. If you don't act on your dream, the world misses something only you could give. So don't just dream, do. Don't just imagine, engage, don't just wait. Work, because the dream is not meant to sit safely in your imagination. It is meant to be lived, and the only way it will ever come to life is if you dare to act right now. The journey back to your true life will not be easy. It will not be smooth, predictable, or pain-free, but it will be worth it, because anything sacred will ask something from you, and the life you promise to yourself is sacred. It's not a shortcut. It's not a detour. It's the road home, but like any real path, it winds. It climbs steep hills. It leads through dark valleys. It demands effort, honesty, and sacrifice. The world will try to convince you to turn back. It will tell you the old life, the safe life, is good enough. It will tempt you with comfort, applause, and ease. But comfort is not the same as calling. You will face resistance. From the outside, yes. But more often from within, fear will whisper that you're too late. Shame will say you don't deserve another chance. Doubt will ask if the path is even real. But don't be surprised, don't be discouraged. This is how all great journeys begin, with uncertainty, with trembling steps, and with a quiet decision to go forward anyway. Each step you take back toward the life you were meant to live will cost you something. You may lose approval, you may lose control, you may lose the comfort of the familiar, but what you gain is infinitely greater. You gain integrity, you gain purpose, you gain peace. Not the peace that comes from avoiding struggle, but the deep, soul-level peace that comes from knowing you are living what is true. You won't always feel strong. There will be days when you question everything, when you feel alone, when you want to give up. But those moments are not signs that you've failed. They are signs that you are on the right path, because the right path will stretch you. It will refine you. It will teach you to depend not on your own strength, but on grace. You will learn patience. You will learn humility. You will learn to keep walking, even when the way is hidden in fog, and slowly something begins to shift. You begin to see glimpses of what once seemed lost. You begin to recognize the person you once promised yourself you would become, not in perfection, but in presence, in courage, in quiet joy. This path, difficult as it is holy, because it brings you closer to the truth. It brings you closer to God. It brings you closer to yourself. And holiness is never about being untouchable or flawless. It is about being real, being awake, being faithful. It is about letting your life become a living response to the voice that called you in the first place. No one else can walk this path for you. No one else can carry your promise, but you do not walk it alone. With every step, grace meets you. With every struggle, strength is formed. With every act of faith, the road unfolds just a little more. So do not be afraid of the difficulty. Do not mistake resistance for the wrong direction. This path is narrow, yes, but it leads to the life you longed for, to the life you were made for, to the life you promised and still can reclaim. It doesn't matter how long it's been. It doesn't matter how far you feel you've drifted. It doesn't matter how many times you've tried and fallen. There is still time. The life you promised yourself has not expired. It hasn't disappeared. It hasn't vanished into the past, never to return. It's still there waiting, waiting with patience, waiting with grace, waiting without condemnation. You may think you're too old, too damaged, too tired, too late, but that's not the voice of truth. That's the voice of regret trying to keep you stuck. That's the voice of fear pretending to be wisdom. The truth is simpler. The truth is stronger. The truth is this: you can begin again. You can rise from whatever place you're in. You can dust off the dream. You can take the first step today. The path hasn't closed. Your story hasn't ended. The ink is still wet. The promise you made to yourself may feel like a distant memory, but it is not lost. It is simply waiting to be remembered. It does not need perfect conditions. It does not require a flawless plan. It only needs your yes, one small yes, one honest decision, one act of faith. You don't have to know how it all unfolds. You don't have to figure everything out at once. You only have to begin. Begin where you are. Begin as you are. Begin even if your hands are trembling and your heart is full of doubt. Because beginning again is not weakness. It is courage. It is strength. It is hope taking action. You are not defined by your delays. You are not bound by your mistakes. You are not disqualified by your detours. In fact, those very things may be what shape you for the life ahead. What you've lived through matters. What you've learned matters. Nothing has been wasted. Even the waiting can serve you, if you let it. Even the broken pieces can be built into something strong. The life you promised yourself may not look exactly as it once did. It may be simpler now, quieter, deeper, but it may also be truer. It may be more honest, more beautiful, more grounded in what really matters. So don't let the past chain you to the ground. Don't let the years gone by convince you to give up. You are still here, and as long as you are still here, the door is not closed. Time has not run out. The invitation is still open. You can begin again with grace. You can begin again with faith. You can begin again without needing anyone's permission. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to justify the time it took to get here. You only need to remember the promise and choose it again, because the life you once saw so clearly is not just a memory. It is a calling, and it's calling still. There is still time, not for waiting but for returning, for rebuilding, for becoming, and the time to begin is now. What if the dream you carry isn't just a dream? What if the promise you made to yourself isn't just a personal goal or a passing desire? What if it's something deeper, something sacred? This isn't just about chasing fulfillment. This isn't just about being happy or achieving something impressive. This is about answering a call, a divine call, because the longing in your heart, the one that won't go away, no matter how long you ignore it, isn't a mistake. It's a whisper from the one who made you. You were formed with purpose, you were created with care, and the life you long to live is not an accident. It's not about ego, it's not about pride, it's about obedience, holy, humble obedience to the truth of who you are, to the gifts you've been given, to the story that has been written into your soul. This is a divine invitation, not to run faster, not to prove yourself, but to align your life with what is real, with what is eternal, with what matters. When you begin to rediscover the promise you made to yourself, you're not just recovering a lost dream, you're returning to your calling. You are stepping into a life that was always meant for you. A life designed with intention. A life that serves not only your joy, but also the healing and hope of others. And when you say yes to that life, you are saying yes to something sacred. You are saying yes to becoming the person you were created to be. You are saying yes to the deeper rhythm of God's voice in your life. And that yes, even if it's whispered through fear, even if it's spoken through tears, is powerful. That yes opens doors no one else can open. It draws strength from places you didn't know you had. It aligns heaven and earth in ways you may never fully see. This isn't just about fulfilling yourself. It's about fulfilling your purpose, and in doing so, glorifying the one who gave it to you. The world tells you to chase what feels good, to follow your heart wherever it wants to go, but the sacred path isn't always easy. It often leads through fire. It often asks you to let go of comfort, control, and certainty. But on the other side of that surrender is peace. On the other side is clarity. On the other side is life, real life. The promise you made to yourself was a glimpse of how your life could echo beyond itself, how your obedience could serve a greater story. So don't dismiss it as fantasy. Don't reduce it to ambition. Don't treat it like an optional dream. It is a calling, and that calling is holy. To answer it is not arrogance. It is humility, it is trust, it is worship, because when you live the life you were born to live, you are not just fulfilling your own potential, you are honoring the one who placed it there. This is a divine invitation. It doesn't come with pressure, it comes with love. It is not a demand, it is a gift, and it waits for your answer, not someday, today. So now the question is not whether you once had a vision. You did. And it's not whether you lost your way. We all do. The real question is, will you return? Will you remember? Will you rise again and keep the promise you made to yourself, not out of pride, not to impress, but because your life is not accidental, because the dream within you is not random, because the world needs what you were created to bring. So let this be the moment, the turning point, the quiet yes that changes everything. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need the courage to begin, start again, step forward, say yes. And don't forget the life you promised to yourself is not behind you. It's ahead of you. Still possible, still waiting, still holy. Go live it.